What's going on, everybody? Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the live stream, to watching every single Alex O'Connor video on the internet. Number 10. Guys, we've reached double digits. It's official. We're an official thing now. Come on, it's an official movement now that we have reached 10 episodes. That's amazing. Drop in the chat. Question for today. You guys ready? Question for the day is, what are you wearing for Halloween? What's your Halloween costume going to be? And no, I'm not asking because I want ideas, but I would love ideas because I have not figured that out yet. But no, I'm asking also because I want to hear from you guys. But yeah, also the ideas part too. But anyway, drop in the chat, what are you wearing for Halloween? And while you're doing that, I am going to open things up because today's episode is kind of on a rough topic. You would have seen it in the thumbnail, in the title. We're talking about death. Death. And the thing about talking about death is it's a very difficult subject for a lot of people. It can be a very scary thing, particularly if you're, say, like an atheist or you left a specific religion that had a depiction of death like hell to worry about. For those who maybe left, apostatized, or are no longer a part of that religious group, death can be a very scary thing. So I want to redirect our thoughts and our minds to maybe help us be comforted a little bit by death, if that's possible. This episode, I'm hoping, is going to be comforting in just a certain sense, but there is a passage from Plato's Apology. I mentioned it in an episode before, talking about Socrates' death, right? And so when I think about death from a secular perspective, my phone is blowing up. Sorry about that, guys. But when I think about death from a secular perspective, I often reflect upon Socrates himself. We talked about martyrs in a couple episodes ago, and Socrates was brought up. Was he a martyr? Because he basically did not stand down for what he believed in and accepted death as an outcome for sharing what he believed, his philosophy. And it is in this passage from Plato's Apology that I personally find a lot of comfort in death. This is not the actual passage itself. This is a summary of it from Cambridge. And then they go on to sort of share further thoughts on the passage as well. But in this specific part, Socrates is doing something really cool, which is, instead of being in front of a jury and defending himself, defending his accusers, defending himself against his accusers, what he does is he stays his ground and basically expresses that he's not afraid of death, that death is the unknown, and why should we be afraid of that which we do not know about? And so this is kind of where I find the comfort. This summary, it says, I'll start right here. It was unprecedented, as far as we know, for a defendant in the Athenian court to end his trial by addressing the members of the jury. But the Apology has Socrates doing just that. While his defense in the Apology was already audacious, Socrates' closing speech appears even more provocative. Among other things, he declares that he has no reason to fear death, but that, on the contrary, the death penalty he received only moments before may well be considered a blessing. Socrates supports this claim with an argument in the form of a constructive dilemma. Either death involves the cessation of consciousness, in which case our afterlife existence will resemble a single night of dreamless sleep, or after our death, we will go to a place where all the dead are ruled over by just judges. Since either scenario constitutes a good statute, death should be considered something good. So the basic idea is that death results in two things. First, it either results in nothingness, which can be scary at the outset. But when we think about it further, I think it's less scary, because when we think about nothingness, it's truly just nothing, right? There's no thought, there's no consciousness. It's not like it's dark and we are consciously aware of the nothingness. No, it's just actual nothingness, right? And so it's this idea of a dreamless sleep. So if you've ever gone to bed and you just kind of woke up the next morning not recognizing what happened, well, right there, that is what it would theoretically be like to die in a cessation kind of perspective. And so with all of this in mind, the other perspective, though, is there's a just judge behind it all. And I mean, if you grew up in a Christian household, then you have to believe that God is just, right? And the thing where people get caught up is the fact that, it says that you must believe and repent of your sins in order to be saved, and that those who reject the, death of Christ reject God. But is that true justice? Now, that's a big theological debate, but I would argue that that doesn't seem like true justice, in so much as God is the one that created us, right? He was the one that created us. He's the one who is in charge of us and our sinful nature. And as a result, he's responsible for our souls. He's responsible to us, and he's responsible for where we end up going at the end of the day. And so with that in mind, the act of basically rejecting an intellectual thing, an intellectual belief, I don't think is intelligence is not a moral thing. It's a different thing. It's intelligence. And so whether someone has the ability to understand and accept God or not should not be something that is in regards to justice, right? Additionally, there's other religions, right, where it is more about that sort of good and evil just judge, which makes sense from a human perspective. But I think at the end of the day, Socrates kind of nails it. He basically says, it's either that there's a just judge, and if you are living a life that I think is, authentic to yourself, and you are striving to do what you perceive of as good, then there will be justice. And there won't be eternal punishment, because eternal punishment for a finite crime is not make sense, right? There's a whole lot of things that we can think about around these lines, but it's the fact that Socrates faced death without worry, without fear in mind, that blows my mind. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Super cool to see that he did not see death as something to be afraid of, but he saw it as, in a sense, the next great adventure. Hopefully that was somewhat encouraging. I don't know how encouraging that might have been, but hopefully it was encouraging for you guys. On a lighter note, before we get into the video and all of that, I wanted to announce, I put it in a short, I'm doing bingo right here. It is, oh wow, it's so blurry. Can you see that better? I don't know. Anyway, bingo. Alex O'Connor bingo. Basically, the idea is as we continue this series and as we find more and more things about, Alex O'Connor that are kind of repeated a lot of the time, things that come to my brain are his triangle in the brain sort of analogy, discussing whether materialism truly is true. He also has discussions on, slavery in the Bible, veganism, consciousness. These are all hot topics that are big on Alex O'Connor, that Alex O'Connor, does a lot of the time. And so what I think is super interesting about all of this is wait a second. Okay, I'm sorry. I was just having an issue there. Okay, cool. We are all good. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, the things that sort of repeatedly come up time and time again in these videos and in the reaction, I guess, is something that I think would be fun to capture, something we can sort of look for as we are watching these videos. And if you want to participate, you don't need a physical copy because there's an online copy. In the description below, there should be something along the lines that says, let's play bingo. And just click that link and you will be able, it will produce a unique bingo sheet for you to fill out. So click the link and you'll be able to sort of fill out the bingo sheet as we go. I figure we can kind of save these bingo sheets, and as we go, we'll hopefully get some bingos. For those who are wondering what the bingo sheets look like, well, once you click that link, you will find something that looks along the lines of this. And basically, the bingo sheet here, I'm going to quickly change perspective. But yeah, basically, it's just a category. Kind of looks like standard bingo is the basic idea behind all of this. So as we go along, is that better? Doesn't quite fit the screen as well, but hopefully that looks a little bit better. But yeah, basically this is the bingo sheet. As we go along, if he talks about the fact that he was an altar boy, boom, check that off. If he talks about Socrates, I mean, I just talked about Socrates, boom, check that one off. Gospel of Thomas, boom, check that one off. So basically that's the bingo sheet. As we kind of go along, as we are watching these things, you can follow along. And as I said, that link is in the description. It should be, it just says, let's play bingo, and it has a little, finger pointing toward the link itself. So click that link. Let me know if it works. And if you get a bingo, let me know in the chat and we will shout you out. We'll celebrate you. And you can save these sheets from week to week as well. So that will be something to keep in mind. I saw a message in the chat. The older you get, the more you let go the fear of death. Are you younger? So talking to Riley. I could see that. That kind of makes sense why that might be the case. I think also just people's experiences in life can maybe cause fear in some sense. But I would assume that, fear of death sort of decreases over time. I also think it's something to, over time you kind of, after reflection and stuff, I would hope that it decreases. Of course, I know Alex has talked about how one point he kind of really thought about the fact that he's going to no longer exist at one point, and that thought did scare him. So it's definitely an interesting existential question, to say the least. But in terms of where we are at, so currently we have watched together we have watched 22 videos. 22, that's twice 11, double 11. Good job. And in terms of how many videos I've watched myself, I've watched 128 videos. So yeah, we are getting there. I watched 4 videos today to try and catch up. So we're getting there slowly but surely, and hopefully we'll get there by the end of the year. So we shall see. I said in the beginning, let me know, do you have a costume for Halloween figured out yet? If so, what is that costume? What do you have prepared for Halloween? And I asked that because I don't have mine figured out yet. So if you don't have yours figured out, don't worry about it. But I would love to get some ideas from you guys if you have any. Well, I think we have discussed death. We've discussed the bingo sheet. We've just discussed pretty much everything that I wanted to discuss, and it should be time to get into the content itself. So this episode, it's his second podcast on his on his show, the Within Reason podcast, the very second one. And it is a discussion with Michael Shermer, talking about death, how to avoid it, and why you shouldn't be afraid. Cosmic Skeptic podcast. So this should be a pretty cool episode. I'm hoping it's encouraging to some of you who might be afraid of death. And yeah, hopefully very educational as well. So let's explore. Without further ado, here it is. Cosmic Skeptic Podcast, Episode 2.
Focusing on the concept. This episode of the Cosmic Skeptic Podcast is brought to you by you. To support the podcast, please visit patreon.com/Cosmic Skeptic. So welcome back, everybody, to the Cosmic Skeptic Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Michael Shermer, who is a historian of science, the editor-in-chief of the magazine Skeptic, and a monthly contributor to Scientific American. He's also the author or co-author of nearly 20 books. I think it's sitting at 19 right now, if I'm not mistaken, including the most recent, which is Heavens on Earth, a book that I'm hoping to discuss today. So, Dr. Shermer, thank you for being here.
Yeah, here's actually the UK cover.
Oh, somebody sent me this. That's quite funny. Okay. It's the wrong way around. So somebody sent me this from the US. This is actually a signed version,
all right.
which I think someone picked up at your event with Frank Turek. That's either this or another event that we did. But yeah, and I watched that online, and that was quite an interesting debate that you guys had. But okay, so what I wanted to talk about essentially is the book, but mainly focusing on the concept of death, which is something that you talk about a lot, and where the afterlife kind of came from that, and how the human psychology and how socially we are reacting to the concept of death. So I suppose for a start, if you could just give a sort of brief overview of the purpose of the book and what it was you were trying to do with it, and kind of an overview of the contents before we get going.
Yeah, so Heavens on Earth was something of an extension of my previous work. I've written on science and pseudoscience, and science and religion, and science and morality, science and politics and economics. So it was sort of a natural extension to write about the biggest subject of all, I guess, is the afterlife and immortality and what happens when you die and so forth. But the main focus of the book is not so much on the religious versions of the afterlife and what scientists think about that, although I have a big chapter on that, a couple chapters on that. But the main focus is on scientific attempts to achieve immortality. That is kind of an afterlife for atheists, in which the idea is you are chronically frozen, or you engage in transhumanist technological and scientific upgrades. You're going to upload your mind into the cloud, into the singularity when that comes, when we have enough computing power, and so on. All these are attempts to achieve a very ancient dream of living forever. And so then I get into the question of the psychology of why we would have that dream in the first place. No other animals that we know of are aware of their own mortality to the point of constructing some kind of afterlife in which things continue beyond the body. We know other animals grieve at loss, but that you might expect from any social species like that, who gets attached, particularly pair bonded or close to other group members, and then they lose them. They naturally feel bad about that. But that's different than conceiving of an immortality. Earliest grave sites, maybe 50 to 100,000 years or so of Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens, indicate that they kind of set up their lost loved one with tools and flowers and arrange the bodies in the grave in a certain way that it sort of looks intentional, like maybe they were thinking that person will continue on in some other form. Of course, that kind of thinking doesn't fossilize, so we don't know for sure. But it's not inconceivable. It's not a crazy idea to think that.
Choosing internet shouldn't be confusing. It should be based on how you live. Whether you're a casual
there we go.
The idea of an afterlife or a heaven or the soul or something continues on, it goes all the way back 100,000 years or so. Cognitively, we are naturally dualists. We tend to think that there are two substances in the universe. There's material and immaterial, corporeal and incorporeal. There's body and soul. There's brain and mind. We have this idea from a very early age. For example, Paul Bloom's research at Yale shows that very little children under age 3, just through a clever experiment with puppets in which one of the puppets dies, and then the question is, well, where does it go? And and at a very early age, I think it's closer to age 4, these children have some idea that the little mouse that died, that the mouseness continues on somewhere else, that the soul of the mouse or the spirit of the mouse or whatever. The little children don't have quite the right language that adults have.
That's so fascinating. So, what was that? Do you guys remember what that study was that he mentioned? That's so fascinating, though, the idea that like little kids have an idea of the soul. I mean, I wonder. So, my 2 questions. First is like, where was this study conducted? What is the population of the kids, doing the study? Because if they were raised in sort of a Western tradition, then that kind of makes sense. But if they're raised in like an Eastern tradition and they still have that kind of sense of like the soul existing after death, I mean, I guess it could be a thing, but I'm interested in that at all. Was it Harvard or Yale? I'm gonna back up real quick and see what he said.
Intentional, like maybe they were thinking that person will continue on in some other form. Of course, that kind of they were thinking to buy Homo sapiens indicate that they kind of set up their lost loved one with tools and flowers and arranged the bodies in the grave in a certain way that it sort of looks intentional, like maybe they were thinking that person will continue on in some other form. Of course, that kind of thinking doesn't fossilize, so we don't know for sure. But it's not inconceivable. It's not a crazy idea to think that the idea of an afterlife or a heaven or the soul or something continues on. It goes all the way back 100,000 years or so. Cognitively, we are naturally dualists. We tend to think that there are two substances in the universe. There's material and immaterial, corporeal and incorporeal. There's body and soul. There's brain and mind. We have this idea from a very early age. For example, Paul Bloom's research at Yale shows that very little children under age 3, just through a clever experiment with puppets in which one of the puppets dies, and
okay, yeah, John, you got it right. Paul Bloom, I think, is what he said, was the person who did the experiment at Yale. So that's fascinating. That I mean, I'll have to look into that study, but that really kind of blows my mind, because I would not think that would be the case. Mostly because I don't know, when I think about like the evolution of hell, it kind of evolves from the idea of like Sheol, which isn't really a place as so much as I guess it could be considered like a place for the dead, sort of the dust, but there, I don't know, there isn't really much of an idea of the soul in early Judaism. So I don't know. I'm curious as to that, and as to what the study is. So definitely something to look into. That's super cool. He was kind of mentioning the scientific like inquiry for death, and it just kind of reminded me of the Philosopher's Stone. So you might be familiar with the Philosopher's Stone from like Harry Potter, but it is an actual thing that people kind of sought for. We see it in like very early texts, and in Western alchemy, there's this sort of substance, which is, I think it's called tincture, or some sort of powder, and it's thought to have the ability to transform base metals into precious metals, so things like gold or silver. And then, most interestingly, it's thought that the tincture would be able to produce the elixir of life. And so that's kind of what we're seeing. I mean, in Harry Potter, it's expressed, but it's also something that is thought about, and this would have been considered science at the time. So it's definitely an interesting one. Religious household or not? Yeah, I wonder what the demographics of the kids were. Yeah, that's kind of my main question on that. Yep, there's also the Fountain of Youth. There's also, I don't know how old this tradition is, but in like Mexico, Dia de los Muertos, I think, if I'm pronouncing that right, the Day of the Dead. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of these kinds of things in order to, in order to kind of connect with the dead, as well as think of the soul lasting beyond that. And then there's inquiry into how can we live forever. There's Horcruxes too. Those, I was looking into that. It's like Russian folklore where that comes from, the Horcrux. But it like weighs your soul down onto the earth and such. So it's definitely an interesting topic of discussion. So yeah, something to look into, something we all think about.
Then the question is, well, where does it go? And and at a very early age, I think it's closer to age 4, these children have some idea that the little mouse that died, that the mouseness continues on somewhere else, that the soul of the mouse or the spirit of the mouse or whatever. The little children don't have quite the right language that adults have to describe that, but the idea that you cannot conceive of not being alive. That is to say, this would be true for all of us, that if I say, imagine yourself dead, you can't do it, because to imagine something, you have to be alive.
Right.
Death would just be the closest analog we have. Is not even sleep, because in sleep you're dreaming. Would be general anesthesia. They give you the injection. It's 3, 2, 1, lights out, and that's it. Now you come back, but there's no time in there that you keep track of. It's just missing time, 3 hours or whatever you were out. And so death would be something like that probably, but you just never wake up.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's whenever I spend a long time trying to figure out what the best way of imagining non-existence or imagining nothing is. And the best that I've been able to come up with is if you close only one of your eyes and try to describe what you're seeing out of that eye, because you don't even see the blackness, because it kind of just doesn't register. It's such an odd thing to think about. But when it comes to this kind of Descartesian dualism that you're talking about, that seems to be, are you saying that that's something that's within, is that something that's just within humans, or is it something that's across the animal kingdom? And is there like a good evolutionary reason for this idea that we exist as kind of two substances, one within the other?
Well, that's a slightly separate question, though an interesting one that has to do with possibly theory of mind and projecting yourself into other.
I'm Sora 2, the new AI in town.
We're not afraid.
People, so that you can anticipate what they might be thinking, so-called mind reading. And other species seem to have something like that. For example, there's the red dot test. If you put a red dot on a chimp's forehead, you put it in front of a mirror, it looks and kind of pokes at it like it knows that's me in the mirror. Right. So that requires some higher cognitive function to be not just aware of you, but aware that I'm somebody, and also aware that you're aware that I am somebody, and I'm aware that you're aware that I'm aware that you're aware, and so on. That kind of meta thinking requires some sophisticated cognition that cetaceans like whales and dolphins and elephants and chimps seem to have. Children at about age 4 get this. Other species like dogs, probably not, doesn't look like it, although dogs are really good at reading human nonverbal language. But that's probably because they evolved from wolves that were co-evolving with us on the periphery of these small groups. That's different than what we're talking about here. I think it's probably unique to us, but whatever its evolutionary origins, whether it's adaptive, I'm more likely to think of it's just a byproduct. I can't think of not being alive, but I see death all around me. So how do you square that circle? It's something of a paradox. I can't conceive of being dead, and yet I know death is real. So one solution to that is, well, you don't actually die.
Comment here. There is some lore of the Lazarus pit being a place of healing and restoration. The title really plays on the resurrection of Lazarus by Jesus in the New Testament. So are you referring to the thing from DC Comics? I was unfamiliar with what you were talking about, but I just looked it up and I see there's a Lazarus pit in DC Comics. Maybe it goes beyond that too, a mythological thing too, but yeah, so I was just reading on it. It says Lazarus Pit is a supernatural phenomenon of restorative pools capable of instant healing injuries. That kind of makes me think of like the pools of Bethesda, right? Where Jesus kind of meets the man sitting next to the pools, and as they bubble up, supposedly a spirit kind of is causing the bubbling up, and if you go to where it bubbles up, then your injuries will be healed. Yeah, DC. Okay, DC Comics, cool. I'm not too familiar with DC. I feel bad. I'm sorry about that. But that's a really interesting idea there. That's cool. So yeah, Lazarus would make sense too. Kind of the idea of like resurrection from the dead. Does it raise people from the dead, or does it just heal injuries? Is that because what I was seeing, it just said heal injuries, but I could see it being more than that too. The thing that I found, interesting is how it connects to maybe also the pool of Bethesda. The pool of Salome. Historical and religious site located southeast. Does it have two names? Or maybe am I just saying it wrong? I think it has... Wait, does it have two names? Hold up. I haven't heard of it called Salome before, but... So this is it in the passage in John 5:2-9. But I looked up what you said, and it seems like it's the same thing. It says... the pool of Bethesda stood near the sheep gate located in reference John 5:2-9. But I also saw what you were saying. Is this the same thing? It says it was constructed. So, Pool of Siloam. Hold up. Oh, okay. There's two pools. Yeah. So this one. I think you're also referring to the one in Hezekiah. This is what it's saying. I don't know if that's more historical rather than from the Bible, but maybe it's from the Bible too. But yeah, this is what you're talking about here. In the Hebrew, there it is. During the Second Temple period, the Pool of Siloam was centrally located in the Jerusalem suburb of Acra, also known as the Lower City. Today, the Pool of Siloam is the lowest place in altitude within the historical city of Jerusalem, with an elevation of about 625 meters above sea level. Wow, that's interesting. Huh. So there's two different pools. Is that one known for... the Pool of Siloam was built during the reign of Hezekiah to leave besieging armies without access to the spring's waters. The newly constructed Siloam tunnel fed the pool. An older Canaanite tunnel had been vulnerable to attackers. So under threat of the Assyrian king, Sennacherib, Hezekiah sealed the old outlet of the Gohan spring and built the new underground Siloam tunnel in place. Oh, is this the tunnel where like King David snuck through in order to get into the city in Jerusalem? He like snuck through like a sewerage kind of tunnel. Is that the same thing? I'm making so many connections right now. That's wild. See, Siloam. Okay, thank you. Siloam. Wow. Thank you. That's so cool. I had no idea. So it's in reference in 2 Kings 18:17 and Isaiah 7:3. If it was built during Hezekiah, though, that would be after David. So maybe it's mentioned in David, but that's kind of the mythology of it. They're kind of referring to something that they would have known of and using David kind of after the fact. I don't know. Maybe that's what that is. I don't know. Or maybe it's just a different thing. He healed the blind man at the pool of Siloam. Siloam. Yes. Yeah, it could be. That's so fascinating. Wow. Thanks, John. That's awesome. That's super cool. I'll look into that a little bit more, but keep playing the video.
Your physical body dies, but there's something else. And that something else being a soul or whatever that, floats off the brain and goes off into wherever it goes, the quantum field or heaven or something like this. I think I'm not convinced there's any adaptive reason for that. People have speculated, well, maybe it reduces anxiety, death anxiety. There's this theory called terror management theory that I'm pretty skeptical of. But in any case, either way, it's an interesting question, and the bottom line is here we are, and we have this capacity, and it's generated a lot of ideas over thousands of years, and has been a major driving force behind religion.
Yeah, well, that's something I wanted to ask you about, and maybe we can touch on terror management theory, what it is, and why you think it's flawed, because you also kind of propose an alternative within your book that you think is more accurately describes human psychology. But would you say that this that religion, as you just kind of alluded to there, are you sort of suggesting that religious belief might spring out of an obsession or an interest in death specifically, rather than other cultural factors? Do you think that death is kind of the main driving force behind the construction of these ideas?
Want to start a podcast, but not sure how? Riverside has got you covered. First,
I don't. I think death is way down the list of important reasons why people adhere to religion, why religion evolved in the first place. I'm more along the lines of what's called the big gods theory, that as small bands of hunter-gatherer bands and tribes coalesced into larger chiefdoms and states, and you move beyond the Dunbar number of about 150 people that you can know fairly well. And when you're in a small group like that, informal means of behavior control and enforcement of moral rules and norms and eventually laws, it's too hard to control that in groups of thousands or tens of thousands. So the idea is that the kind of animism, spiritism of hunter-gatherers then evolved into polytheism and monotheism of God's up there watching you. So if you, in this big, huge group of 10,000 people or 100,000 people or 1 million people, say 5, 6, 7,000 years ago, if you think you got away with it because no one saw you, there's an eye in the sky that keeps track of it all. It's a way of enforcing norms and rules. And I think the evidence for that is pretty good. I like that theory better than people adhere to religion because they're afraid of death. Now, if you ask people, surveys, psychologists of religion do this, why people believe in God, fear of death is, it's pretty way down the list. Now, of course, at the end, you're given the last rites, or you've been given a death sentence by your doctor, stage 4 cancer or whatever. Yes, of course, then people start thinking about that. And religions then will focus on that, and at funerals and so forth, wakes and whatnot. There's a lot of liturgy around that. But in terms of, the average person on any given religious holiday or ceremony, that's not what it's about. It's about community, social capital, enforcement of norms and rules, and being a good person and taking care of the poor and needy, and being an altruistic, pro-social, cooperative, good, moral person. That's really what is behind religion, I think.
Right. But then the terror management theorists would say that itself, the kind of the culture, the societal cohesion that you're saying religion sprung out of, that itself sprung out of a fear of death, of an implicit and constant realization and knowledge that you're headed towards this end, this ultimate end, and that's what's driving the ability for social cohesion. There's lots of studies that seem to suggest that when people are reminded of death, they act very differently and they're more likely to focus on social cohesion and things like that. But you don't seem to like this idea very much.
That is what they say, and that's exactly what they argue. It was well articulated. I'm skeptical of that. First of all, it's mostly dependent on subconscious motives that are hard to access, so they have to do these careful experiments to do that. And we know that a lot of that kind of unconscious, like with unconscious racism, with this test, the IAT, is not too reliable. It hasn't been replicated as much as we'd like, but more importantly, there's better explanations. In other words, my explanation counter to the terror management theories, they're not measuring what they think they're measuring. They say, we're telling subjects think about death, and therefore they act differently. So that's the independent variable. But I don't think so. I think something else is going on there that I think has more to do with enforcement of rules and morals.
Yeah, so I mean, could you give us perhaps an example of a study which people have taken to support terror management theory, but could also be explained to support your view?
Well, like the famous experiment with the judges, in which they give harsher sentences after being primed with these think about death or it's sort of mortality priming. I think it has more to do with kind of reminding people of the importance of a moral system in the here and now, and that we have to have justice now, and priming somebody for mortality reminds them that justice should be done now.
Right.
And therefore we give harsher sentences. That's how I would interpret that.
But so even if rather than instilling a kind of terror that needs to be managed, it instills a need for social cohesion, does that not still suggest that death is a driving force behind lots of social behavior?
One factor. And again, I would put it far down. Like, for example, terror management theorists, they go on and on about how, terror, the terror, managing the terror of fear of death has driven people to be creative and, art, music, and poetry and architecture and song and dance and, come on. No one theory explains everything. And I think the evolutionary psychologists have a far better explanation for why humans try to be creative that has more to do with mating behavior than it does fear of death. And I quote at length in there David Buss's analysis of terror management theory from an evolutionary psych perspective, and I agree with his skepticism of it.
So you think that the religious expression and the social expression of mankind can be whittled down more to mating, essentially?
Well, as one factor, again, we're multi-causal, and most explanations for human behavior are overdetermined, as we say. That is, there's probably more variables proffered than are needed. You can kind of tease those out, but it's not one, and it's not 100. It's a handful, a half a dozen, or something that
I mean, the reason I ask, I don't mean to interrupt. The reason I ask is because if there are lots of factors, then something like mating, something like the drive for survival, can be seen as a backhanded way of avoiding death or managing death. Spreading your genes in the knowledge that if you don't do so, then you are finite and you need some way to continue. So there's still something to be said for the idea that it is, if the evolutionary course is driven by survival, then evolutionarily we are driven by an avoidance of death. That seems to be fairly logical for me.
Yes, okay, right. That makes some sense. Although, see, if you start with, say, Richard Dawkins' The Selfish Gene, and what?
Hey, there we go. I've been waiting, bro, for them to mention something. It's not mentioned by Alex, but hey, he mentioned Richard Dawkins. If you guys have that on your bingo sheet, and if you're wondering where to get the bingo sheet, go to the description. It's in the description. It says, "Let's play bingo." And basically, if you have Richard Dawkins on your bingo sheet, you can knock it out. It should be online, so you can just click on the tile, and it will be there. Do I have Richard Dawkins on this one? I don't think I do. No, I got super excited there for a second. Well, if you have Richard Dawkins, congratulations to you. You have one more space toward a bingo and the free space. So make sure to knock off your free space with Alex's face there in the middle. So let's continue to talk about death. I should have put death on there. I don't know. Doesn't seem like something he talks about that much, but that would have been really fitting for today. So good job, y'all.
What would a molecule do to perpetuate itself? Well, first of all, it has to figure out how to duplicate itself, but then it has to be embedded in some kind of machine that can carry it forward and protect it in an environment that's hostile for some period of time. So I have a whole section in Heavens on Earth on why we have to die, and it has to do with this fact that there's no reason that natural selection would select for a body that lives forever when all you really need to do is reproduce to get the genes into the next generation. So maybe 2 generations is all you need. I need to get my offspring. I need to perpetuate my genes into my offspring, but I got to make sure my offspring get to an adult age where they have reproductive viability and have kids. So maybe grandparenthood is about the length we need. And after that, it would just be a waste of resources for natural selection to engineer a body that lives, say, 300 years or whatever. You just not need it. So in that sense, I guess I wouldn't call it fear of death. It's just...
Hold up. That doesn't really make a ton of sense to me, because if the notion is like just get to your grandkids, basically, like that, I don't know, that seems a little weird. Like, why stop there? Why would that have to be the check mark? Maybe that wasn't the point he was making. Maybe I'm misunderstanding him, but that seemed a little weird. Like, why cut it off there? Like, if the point is to survive, shouldn't we have an inward desire to survive forever? I don't know. Or to at least pass on our genes forever? I guess your genes at some point are going to get so confuddled that your offspring no longer really are representative of you that much. But I don't know. Still, it does seem... I don't know. It seems a little bit weird to say that grandkids is the cutoff point, you know? That's the final bit, and then you're good to go. I don't know. That seems a little weird.
The logic of how evolution works, that the second law of thermodynamics, entropy, will grind away at bodies, and it would take an enormous re-engineering by natural selection to overcome those forces over the long run. So it's just easier to, let the organism fall apart after some time when it's clear that the genes have been perpetrated.
Right, but taking that evolutionary the reality and trying to adapt it is something that we're doing at the moment, or at least beginning to do as a species when it comes to efforts to prolong life or try to starve off death entirely. And that's something that you speak about a lot in the book as well. Is that something that springs from a personal interest? I mean, for a lot of people, death is one of their biggest fears, and the corollary for that is one of their biggest hopes is some way of extending life or avoiding death. Is that something that you share? Is that for any reason, like part of the motivation for researching this kind of stuff, or is it purely out of interest?
This reminds me, before he gets into that, because I think people do have thoughts about, death before they're going to die. They were mentioning that earlier. I did a news story on someone a few years back, and she basically wrote a book called Waking Up Before We Die, and it was really cool. It was a really cool package, super cool story to share. And she, was older, but she basically said that she's never been afraid of death her whole life. She's never really been too afraid of death. But then she had this surgery, and it was very intense, and she could have died during the surgery. And it made her start to reflect in her older age on death itself. And she realized that she was a lot more afraid of it than she originally thought. And a lot of that fear came from basically not having done some of the things that she wanted to do with her life. And so that kind of stemmed into her writing this book, because one of the things was she wanted to write more. And it was this idea of, waking up before we die. It's a really cool book. Super interesting. Her story's awesome. But Yeah, I think it definitely makes sense that you're going to start reflecting upon death, right before you're about to die, or as you age, and maybe like if you're familiar with Rhett McLaughlin, I think is his last name, from Rhett and Link, Good Mythical Morning. He recently shared that he went through an extensive procedure, and during it he started to think about death itself, and he posted a video on hell and why he's not afraid of hell anymore. But the existential kind of questions there start to pop up as death approaches, and so I think that's very fascinating.
Yes, when I hit my 60s, I started researching this book because cramming for the final is coming up.
That's good.
No, actually, frankly, I don't really think about it that much emotionally. Maybe a little bit more now than say in my 20s or something. But but I'm pretty physically fit and healthy and strong, and it's not something that feels like it's knocking on my door. I suppose maybe if 20 more years from now I'll feel differently about that, but I'm more intellectually interested in the subject. Although, like anybody else, I don't want the party to stop. I want the party to go on, and I want to be able to go to the party anytime I want. Yeah. Christopher Hitchens famously said, death is like, they tap you on the shoulder and say you have to leave the party now, and worse, the party's going to go on without you. It's like, oh no.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, with the offer of heaven, as Hitch famously said, this would be like you're tapped on the shoulder and told that you can never leave the party. It's like, well, no, that doesn't sound appealing either. So, but here I do debunk the idea that people have a sense of how long they should live, and then then it should end. This is nonsense. I mean, these are from surveys people take like when they're in their 20s. How long would you like to live? I don't know. And the answer they give is almost always pretty closely pegged to the average lifespan, say 75, 80. And they go, yeah, I guess 80 sounds right. But of course, if you're 79 and tomorrow's your birthday, and I say to you, well, the Grim Reaper's coming tomorrow, would you like another week instead? Well, assuming you're strong and healthy and not on your deathbed, almost everybody would say, well, yes, of course. And then a week goes by, and here's the Grim Reaper coming tomorrow. Would you like another month? Oh, yes, I would take another month. How about a year? I'll take another year. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Now, of course, this doesn't apply to people that are deeply depressed and have severe diseases where they're barely living. That's a different scenario. But again, I think the idea of people wanting to live a long time, yes, I'm right on board with that. If I could go 150, 200 years and I'm still, physically feeling good and healthy and I could have 10 more careers, it would be great. I wouldn't say I would want 10 more wives, but
wouldn't it leave you with a
He's not much of a fan of Islam, I guess, in that case. Yeah, that's very fascinating. It kind of makes me think about a lot of in like fiction, a lot of the races that live a very long time, like elves or dwarves. They'll like live like extended lives, and it kind of, I don't know, it makes me think about that a little bit. Like, what would it actually be like to live like 500, 600 years? And I think part of me is like, I would not like that. I don't think I'd enjoy that. But another part of me is like, well, okay, let's say everyone lived that long, right? Everyone lived 300 years. Everyone lived 500 years. Then that would just be the normal thing, and I wouldn't think much of it. In fact, maybe I'd be craving another 50 years after that, just another week sort of thing, And to me, I think that's probably more of what we're seeing. If eternal life was a real thing, I wonder if we would like it, or it would, maybe it'd just be the normal thing, so we wouldn't think to dislike it. I don't know. So that's one thought. And then another thought that comes to mind is basically, when we look at history, we see that life expectancy, the amount of that people live to, the age that the average person lives to, has increased because of health reasons, right? We are living longer as a species, especially a species our size as a mammal. We are surprisingly living much longer than we should. And so to me, what that kind of shows is that our expectation to live, say, 75 to 80 years, maybe 100 years, right? At the most, that expectation isn't as shaped by what we really want and more shaped by probably the fact that that's just how life is. And so if it was more like 500 years, if it was more like 1,000 years, if it was more like 1,000,000 years, if it was more like eternity, right? Then that would be our expectation, and we would probably live life slightly differently, but we'd also, I don't know, that would just be kind of the expectation, and there wouldn't be this thought of like, oh, life's going way too long. Because if you ask people back, like, I don't know, 10,000 years ago, when the life expectancy was much, much lower, they'd probably think, living to your 30 was crazy. They'd be like, whoa, you're 30 years old? That's super old. And now we're like 30, that's super young, So that, that's an interesting kind of dilemma. I don't know. It's really just about perspective, I think, and possibility. We restrict ourselves to a certain possibility. We know that, you're probably not going to live more than 100 years. At the very, very peak, maybe 120 years. I think that was the oldest person we know of in modern times that lived to 120. So maybe if you last that long. But even so, because people last that long, that's why we kind of desire that. If people lasted longer, maybe we would desire more.
The sense of, because there is an ultimate finality, I understand the idea of extending life. Like if you could give yourself if you could give yourself forever, if you could live forever, then you'd probably take that perhaps. But if it's just a case of extending by 100 years or 200 years, I can see quite easily how if I knew from the start that I had an extra 200 years, I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be bothering because I know how much time I've got. Would you?
Well, why not? Why wouldn't you?
Well, I feel as though even if death isn't the motivation in terms of fear, in terms of just terrified of death and doing things to distract yourself, essentially, as terror management theory has it, at the very least, it offers you a deadline. It says you have to have everything done by this point. It's like if you give a college student a deadline and they have months to do it, they're going to leave it until the last minute. It's just going to happen. But if you set them deadlines every single week, or you set it a lot closer, then they'll be more inclined to get on with the work. If you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, but Alex, how old are you?
19, 20 now, actually. My birthday the other day.
20, yeah. Okay. So, essentially death is so far off, it's not something you even need to think about it. And yet here you are doing your podcast. Why bother? You could put this podcast off another 30 years. Why are you bothering?
But, I think I might do if I knew I had that extra 30 years, because there's something about and it may just be my status quo bias speaking, but there's something about the current life expectancy of maybe 100 years at best. That
Riley, I just saw your message. Yeah, I know it could be very dark, and I'm sorry if it's hard for you to hear, but I think in a sense it's healthy to talk about death, because when we don't talk about it, I think we tend to ignore the fact that it's coming. Everyone's going to die sometime, and, we can make for it our life what we have. You get one life, and you can kind of seize it from day to day. And, but I think the thing that they were mentioning earlier, which I found, I don't know, interesting, is the notion that, we all sort of aspire to do things, and also the notion that aspiration is not necessarily connected to death itself. At least that's what Shermer's kind of arguing, is that because you want to do these things, the motivating factor underlying it all is not death, it's a lot of other things. And he's probably going to get to that point. And so I don't think we have to sort of feel like we're running out of time or running out of, we're just like running out of time and we need to go. But instead we can kind of just ask ourselves, what do we want out of this life? What do we want to create? What are the things that we want to do? Who do we want to be? And we can let that sort of bring value to ourselves, bring value to our life. And then from there, start to act on that and produce that, have this sort of vision that you have for the future, have a vision for your life. And since you only have, one life, I mean, maybe you have more than one life, who knows, but you can kind of strive for that. Another thing that I don't know if they'll mention this, but have you guys ever seen I think it's called The Egg? Is that right? The Egg. It's a YouTube video. I might play some of it, but it's a really cool video where it talks. Yeah, this is it. The Egg. It's a short story. It initially was an essay. I'm going to pull it up here real quick. And it kind of describes a possible way of thinking about the world. So I'll play it here real quick, and then we can kind of get back to the episode.
A lot of women struggle with getting adequate care. United Healthcare makes me feel supported and seen.
Okay, here we go.
You were on your way home when you died. It was a car accident. Nothing particularly remarkable, but fatal nonetheless. It was a painless death. The medics tried their best to save you, but to no avail. Your body was so utterly shattered, you were better off, trust me. And that's when you met me. What happened? Where am I? You died, I said, matter-of-factly. No point in mincing words. There was a truck, and it was skidding. Yes. I died. Yes. But don't feel bad about it. Everyone dies. You looked around. There was nothingness. Just you and me. What is this place? Is this the afterlife? More or less. Are you God? Yes, I'm God. My kids? My wife? What about them? Will they be all right? That's what I like to see, I said. You just died and your main concern is for your family. That's good stuff right there. You looked at me with fascination. To you, I didn't look like God. I just looked like some man or possibly a woman. Some vague authority figure, maybe. Don't worry, I said. They'll be fine. Your kids will remember you as perfect in every way. They didn't have time to grow contemptuous of you. Your wife will cry on the outside, but will be secretly relieved. To be fair, your marriage was falling apart. If it's any consolation, she'll feel very guilty for feeling relieved. Oh, so what happens now? Do I go to heaven or hell or something? Neither. You'll be reincarnated. Ah. So the Hindus were right. All religions are right in their own way. Walk with me. You followed along as we strode through the void. Where are we going? Nowhere in particular. It's just nice to walk while we talk. So, what's the point then? When I get reborn, I'll just be a blank slate, right? A baby. So, all my experiences and everything I did in this life won't matter. Not so. You have within you all the knowledge and experiences of all your past lives. You just don't remember them right now. I stopped walking and took you by the shoulders. Your soul is more magnificent, beautiful, and gigantic than you can possibly imagine. A human mind can only contain a tiny fraction of what you are. It's like sticking your finger in a glass of water to see if it's hot or cold. You put a tiny part of yourself into the vessel, and when you bring it back out, you've gained all the experiences it had. You've been in a human for the last 48 years, so you haven't stretched out yet and felt the rest of your immense consciousness. If we hung out here for long enough, you'd start remembering everything. But there's no point to doing that between each life. How many times have I been reincarnated then? Oh, lots. Lots and lots. And into lots of different lives. This time around, you'll be a Chinese peasant girl in 540 AD. Wait, what? You're sending me back in time? Well, I guess technically, time as you know it only exists in your universe. Things are different where I come from. Where you come from? Oh, sure. I come from somewhere else. And there are others like me. I know you'll want to know what it's like there, but honestly, you wouldn't understand. Oh, you said, a little let down. But wait, if I get reincarnated to other places in time, I could have interacted with myself at some point. Sure, happens all the time. And with both lives only aware of their own lifespan, you don't even know it's happening. So, what's the point of it all?
I love this so far. There's about to be a really big twist here. So you'll see that here in a second. But I think the cool thing is I don't know if reincarnation is true, but I think in a sense it does make sense. Because at least if you're a materialist and you believe that the universe is eternal, then it makes sense because, well, in an infinite amount of time, then particles are going to reform and in a sense you will exist again because at least if you're a materialist, the material that makes you and who you are as a conscious being, if there's an infinite amount of time, well, then it makes sense that eventually you will be existing again. So there's that. This is a different take on it, though, and you'll see kind of the twist here. So it'll be very interesting. We'll get back to the video in just a second, but we got a couple more minutes on this one.
I looked you in the eye. The meaning of life, the reason I made this whole universe, is for you to mature. You mean mankind? You want us to mature? No, just you. I made this whole universe for you. With each new life, you grow and mature and become a larger and greater intellect. Just me? What about everyone else? There is no one else. In this universe, there's just you and me. You stared blankly at me. But all the people on Earth, all you, different incarnations of you. Wait, I'm everyone. Now you're getting it. I'm every human being who ever lived. Or who will ever live. Yes. I'm Abraham Lincoln. And you're John Wilkes Booth too. I'm Hitler, you said, appalled. And you're the millions he killed. I'm Jesus. And you're everyone who followed him. You fell silent. Every time you victimized someone, you were victimizing yourself. Every act of kindness you've done to yourself. Every happy and sad moment ever experienced by any human was or will be experienced by you. You thought for a long time. Why? Why do all this? Because someday you will become like me. Because that's what you are. You're one of my kind. You're my child. Wow, you said incredulous. You mean I'm a god? No, not yet. You're a fetus. You're still growing. Once you've lived every human life throughout all time, you will have grown enough to be born. So the whole universe, it's just an egg, I answered. Now it's time for you to move on to your next life. And I sent you on your way.
And that's the egg. There's also a, paper version that you can read, but I mean, obviously the animation's so much cooler. But yeah, I think it is something, and I don't know if it's true. It's possible. There's theoretically anything is possible. There's so many possibilities out there. And when I have to say, when we fear something like an afterlife, like eternal torture, those things just don't make sense. Philosophically, like if you're going to torture someone eternally for something that was finite, your life here on earth, like that makes no sense. That's not justice. And if you're going to posit that God is perfect and perfectly just, well, then that's not a system that makes any sense at all. And so something like this philosophically makes maybe a little bit more sense. Is there evidence of this? I mean, I don't think so. I don't think there's evidence for this, but it makes more sense at least. And it's maybe a comforting idea. It's also something that I think can encourage people to treat others well, because like basically the notion, treat other people like you want to be treated, is so much more true in this sense. If everyone is theoretically you at a different state, then whatever you do to anyone, you are either helping yourself or you are hurting yourself. So maybe it's an extreme version of egotism, but it's a beautiful thing. And so there's a lot of ways that we can think about what death is. It's a mystery at the end of the day. And so like any mystery, right? Like for instance, if you got a new job, or if you move to a new city, or if you maybe when you were younger you started a new school, there's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of things unknown. But as you experience the new thing, as you maybe experience death, there's probably something new to be gained, something new to be learned or experienced. Maybe it's nothing, in which case there's also still nothing to be afraid of, because it's nothing, So, but there's a lot of possibilities out there. But I find that one really comforting. I find that one really, really interesting. So, sorry to kind of take things off topic, but hopefully that was encouraging as well, because this is a tough topic. Death is scary. It's very hard for a lot of people. So, hello, Parso. Welcome to the live stream. If you are wanting to play bingo along with us, I got the bingo sheet right here. You can follow along. It's in the description. It'll generate a unique bingo sheet for you. And you can then kind of, as we go along, and find certain things, like we just heard them talk about Richard Dawkins. So you can kind of check that off and see if you get a bingo. So we shall see. But I say let's continue the reaction.
Need a UGC video for your business?
Oh.
Find me and many other skilled creators on Fiverr. Or you can
It allows you to really kind of separate life into stages. It's like, if you don't get this done by here, then you won't get this done by here. You need to have your education done by the time you're 20. And when you're 20 to 30 or 40, you want to be getting started with your career so that you can peak and then you can retire at this age. It seems to follow that course. If you told me I had another 100 years, then I might just spend the next 10 years just relaxing, doing as little as I can, or being less motivated. Even if I was still doing things, do you not think it would lower the motivation in a way, even if it doesn't?
Maybe that's possible. Like the fact that like you only live to this certain extent, you're going to maybe procrastinate things if you had a longer life. But I mean, to me, I also think that just leaves the door open to more discovery, right? And so I don't actually agree with that notion. I think maybe there would be a sense of, I don't need to rush to get things done, but there would be this sense of, I should get things done. I shouldn't just be lazy and do nothing with my life, because in the act of, getting new things done, there becomes new goals, new aspirations, new things to achieve. And with a life that extends to maybe 80 years, there's this much that we can achieve, right? Only very little. But with a life that's maybe 200 years, there's a lot more that you can achieve, a lot more goals, a lot more things to aspire to. I mean, Alex, he's a guy that is very intelligent. He seeks for a lot of knowledge. He wants to understand a lot of things. And, he has a limited life. And if his life was a little bit longer, there'd be a lot more that he'd be able to discover. Maybe he wouldn't stick to just philosophy. Maybe he'd stick to finding new topics or new aspirations. I don't know, but I think it has a role, but personally, I don't think it has that big of a role. It's probably overemphasized the role at which we would maybe procrastinate things.
Get rid of it entirely?
No, and I don't think you would. I think you'd get up in the morning and go, yep, I want to get out there and make my mark and do something fun and interesting and make some money and so on.
Right.
You still got to make money.
Yeah.
Just even if you live 200 years, you still got to get up and pay your mortgage tomorrow. This is my answer, by the way, to people that say, just live in the now. The now of roughly 3 seconds. The past is gone. You can't do anything about it. The future isn't here yet. This is my friend Deepak Chopra is always telling me, Shermer, just live in the now. Just relax, chill out. It's like, but Deepak, my mortgage is due next week. I got to work. I got to plan ahead. I can't live in the now.
Yeah.
All right. So in a way, it doesn't really matter how long you live. You still got to get up and go to work tomorrow. So the motivations are there for other reasons, I think.
But put it the other way, like if I told you that I'm going to shave off 20 years of the life that you have left, then wouldn't that motivate you to do more than you are already? Like if I told you that...
Yes. Yeah, of course. If I knew I was going to die, say, in 6 months, I probably, there's some things I wouldn't bother doing, like long-term planning of a book or film project. I'd spend more time with my kid or something like that. But I do that anyway. I spend a lot of family time just thinking, well, I'm thinking I'll live 80, 90 years, but I could get run over on my bike tomorrow.
Yeah.
So there's no, I'm a cyclist and in California, there's some risks. I could get run over. People are killed every year. Many people are killed on their bikes every year. This could definitely happen. So you have to balance it between, I'm not saving it all for the greatest 90th birthday of all time. And yet I'm not going to act like tomorrow's the end. Therefore I have to drop everything and not do my work.
Right. But I'm not just thinking about it in terms of, I give you 6 months to live. I mean, in the sense that if you told me that whereas I was going to die at 80 and now going to die at 50, like that's still a considerable amount of time to get things done, but I would feel more motivated, even though it's not an immediate thing. And even though, I could arguably get the same amount of work done if I just tried a bit harder, I'd want to try a bit harder and get it all done, even though that's quite an abstract, amount of time to take away, because I have no idea how I'm going to spend that time. For some reason now I'd still feel more motivated to get on with things. If I told you that you were going to have a 30-year life expectancy less than the average, then you might be more wanting to get out there and do stuff. But it just seems to me natural that the corollary of that is that if you extend your life, then that motivation level goes down.
I'm not sure. Maybe we have an example of Stephen Hawking, who was giving essentially a death sentence in his early 20s. And that did kind of motivate him to finish his PhD and get married and have kids, kind of accelerate the process. But then he ended up living into his 70s. And so he just, like everybody else, got up every day and went to work. So, maybe the deadline rushed sooner makes you more motivated to get things done a little faster. I'm not sure the corollary of that, extending it out, double, triple the lifespan would change that. Although it's an interesting experiment. You could do it essentially with surveys. Imagine you're living 200 years. How would your life change? But people, I don't know how valuable the data would be. None of us have any idea what that would mean.
Yeah, you can only really get accurate results on that if you do it rather cruelly.
Here's what
I would agree. I feel like you'd have to actually tell someone and make them believe that their life is either longer or shorter or what have you, and then see the results. So, but the point about Stephen Hawking, that makes sense. That was a good point in my opinion.
I tell my transhumanist cryonic singularity friends, look, just, who say, Shermer, don't you want to live 500 years or something? Look, just get me to 90 without prostate cancer and get me to 100 without Alzheimer's and so on, where I'm just bedridden and don't even know who I am, and then we'll take it from there. If we can extend the life from, say, 120 of the upper ceiling to 150, okay, let's just try that. Because to do that, there's a whole bunch of problems you have to solve along the way. The ones I just mentioned, for example. For me, I'm a baby boomer. As in the next 20 years, the rates of Alzheimer's are just going to go through the roof, as we hit the wall. The projections are just really scary about Alzheimer's. Okay, if you could just solve that one problem, this would be a huge boon to humanity. It would be a great step of medical and moral progress and the quality of life and so on for so many millions of people. That, in other words, instead of worrying about living forever, let's just solve specific problems one by one and improve the quality of life, which is what we've been doing. So I make the point early in the book that it's a myth that people live twice as long now as they used to. Darwin lived into his age 79 or whatever. People lived into their 80s, centuries ago, just not very many of them.
Yeah.
Now more and more people get up to the upper ceiling with quality of life. And so that's what we've been able to do through through medicine and hygiene and public health and so on. That's what I'm talking about, just solving specific problems.
Hi, I'm Manya. I'm a PhD student at MIT, and I hope you'll join me this.
So, do you think that there is a way that we should divvy up the resources when it comes to the resources that we have to apply to life and the kind of concepts we're talking about? If we had to divvy it up between efforts to extend life and efforts to starve off death and understand how we can overcome it, and efforts to improve life as it is currently, like 80 years. Most people today in the modernized world, if they live 80 years, they're going to have a fairly good life on average. Can we kind of get to a point where we say that because everybody is doing so well, we should be focusing the resources rather on improving life, the quality of life, trying to take that quality of life that exists and extending it?
Well, we should do both. I mean, in terms of science, technology, and the economics behind it, we should be trying to lift everyone out of poverty, which we are. The rates of poverty have plummeted in the last 25 years, and they'll be zero, according to the UN definition of poverty, if you accept that $2.90 a day or less. Extreme poverty, that'll be zero by 2030 at the latest. And, get everybody up to a living wage and so on. So from the bottom up, we should be doing that. And that includes all the stuff like the Gates Foundation does, is distributing vaccinations and potable water and mosquito nets and just the basic qualities of life kind of things from the bottom. Now at the top, of course, initially only the wealthiest people are going to be able to afford these technologies that enable you to continue. But that's how it is with all technologies. Once it becomes popular to do, then the prices will drop and more people will be able to adapt the technology. That always happens. It's happened with computers. Now everyone has a computer, and it's happened with. It's happening now. We're right in the middle of one of these revolutions with electric cars. So the electric cars have been around for a century. There was many electric taxis in New York City in 1920 as there were gasoline powered taxis in New York City in 1920. But then for various economic reasons and political reasons, fossil fuel industry and the internal combustion engine outcompeted the electric car. And so it just died until, they tried to bring it back in the 80s and 90s and it just didn't take off. And it really took Elon Musk to say, nope, we're going to do this. It's going to be expensive, fast, it goes far, and it's a super cool car to drive. I have one right here next to me. But now, instead of $100,000, they're $35,000. The price of a Toyota Corolla or whatever. And now all the manufacturers are bringing out super cool.
Yeah, here it is. So, what he was saying here, the story and pictures of early electric cars, 1880 to 1920. Wow, early electric cars found a lucrative market for driving around cities, rechargeable batteries that provide a viable means for storing electricity on board a vehicle did not come until 1859 with the invention of the lead acid battery by French physicist Gaston Planté. Wow, that's so interesting. So electric cars go back really far. What was it? What is likely the first human carrying electric vehicle with its own power source was tested along a Paris street in April 1881. 1881. That is insane. 1881. That's so old. Oh my goodness. It's over 100 years old. Yeah, so that's electric. Thomas Edison in an electric car in 1913. Wow. How did it take us that long, guys? That is insane. To adopt something that's always existed. That's crazy.
Cool, fast electric cars that are fun to drive, that go hundreds of miles, and pretty soon everyone will have one. Everyone can afford it. And that's the same thing that'll happen medically for extending life. At first it'll be expensive, but eventually.
I think what's really going to take over is obviously electric cars, but I think self-driving cars are going to take over. I think what's eventually going to happen is people aren't going to learn to drive. People are just going to like take self-driving cars pretty well everywhere. They're going to be on their own route. They're going to be super efficient. They'll be able to like communicate with each other. I'm sure like, hey, I'm going to switch over. And so it makes it safer. Like from one car to the other, the car will be like, okay, I'll slow down and let you kind of get over to the next lane. It'll just be connected somehow and be able to, do that. I don't know. This is just ideas I've thought about, and I've heard some stuff from like Neil deGrasse Tyson. I think it's definitely very plausible that the future is probably going to be a world where people aren't driving. And I think I heard of this somewhere. Definitely fact check me on this, but I remember hearing somewhere that like the rates at which people are getting driver's license is decreasing for like the younger generations. Like when people turn, here in the US 16, I think in other countries like 18, basically when they're turning driving ages, they are less likely to actually get a license. They'll either wait a longer period of time or they won't get it at all. So that's, I don't know, really interesting how that's kind of working out.
Everyone can adapt it, and I think that's where we're heading. Now, you mentioned resources. It is important to address this, that, a typical response to this is that we shouldn't do this because, it's a finite planet. Well, again, let's solve that problem when we get there. This would be like saying, well, we better not engage in vaccinations, because then if so many people live, then we're going to run out of water and food and so on. So let people die. No, right. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. We're going to try to save people as much as we can. And again, I'm very skeptical of any of these proposed scientific technological theories about living 500 years. We're not even remotely close to being able to do this. So don't worry about the resources problem. Instead, we should be working on resources for other reasons, and that will take care of itself down the line if we do live 200 years or whatever. Because one of the things that people that are educated and economically well off and prosperous, they have fewer babies. And so the population curve is going to flatten out by 2050 or so and start to go back down. So even if we start living much longer lives, I'm not convinced that the overpopulation resource depletion problem is a serious one.
At least not yet. But if the end goal is to extend life like a currently unfathomable amount of time, hundreds of years, let's say, if that's kind of the end to which we're moving with this research, then is it not a little bit careless to begin this research, kind of not paying attention to the fact that eventually if we get to where we're trying to go in the end, we're going to have a massive problem in terms of overpopulation. People aren't going to want to stop having children. And especially if we can extend life in such a way that retains youth, people might be able to continue having children into their 100th year, their 200th year. Who knows? Like, it could bring untold problems, not only economically, but ethically, that perhaps we should really start thinking about before we even take a step in that direction.
Yeah, no, I disagree with that. This is the precautionary principle that ethicists talk about. I realize it's a legitimate argument. I don't buy it. I don't buy it because it's almost always used as a cudgel against new technologies that in the end almost always turn out to be good and rarely turn out to be bad. Okay, nuclear weapons would be an example of the latter one, I suppose, but even their nuclear power could counterbalance that. I say go for it. On any given technological revolutions, there's always this pushback. Oh my gosh, we're playing God. Oh, the precautionary principle. There could be consequences down the line. Same thing that happened with IVF, in vitro fertilization in the 1980s. Right. Oh, not just from the Catholic Church pushback, but secular arguments against it. Okay, and now I think it's like 1.5% of all babies born are born by IVF, and no one says a word about it ethically anymore. Nothing wrong with it.
Sure.
And
wow.
Enter the expedience.
I feel like so much of this, I'm going to mute that, but so much of this is kind of just stemming down to the idea that, this possibly could play out this way, could possibly play out this way. Who knows? It's like, there isn't a lot of deep thinking and argument. There's just so much unknown to this topic. It's like, maybe this, maybe that, I don't know. It's kind of crazy.
go that way.
But so not just talking about a pushback though, because like take nuclear weapons for example. If you have a pushback against that ethically, people are still going to do it. Like people are obsessed, I think, with trying to extend life because of what I see as a fear of death, or maybe it's not a fear of death. Whatever it is, people really want to live longer. So these technologies are going to grow anyway. So I don't think a concern about the economic and philosophical implications of this is going to be seen or going to be successful as a kind of, you shouldn't be doing this, let's lobby against this. Just more like, we know you're going to do this is inevitable at this point, and we know this research is going to take place. So while you're doing that, let's consider how we can best react to this as a society.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I would say I agree with that. In the same way with concerns about AI. Yeah, I'm not concerned about it. I realize other people are, but as we push forward, sure, let's have committees and debates and talk about it. But again, just take it one step at a time. If there's a problem, solve that problem, whatever it is. And you know, if it's one thing our species is really good at, it's problem solving. You know, very specific, narrow things. We have that problem right there. All right, let's put up $100,000 prize for anybody that can solve that problem, right. And boom, it gets done.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, where are we at now economically with all of this? If I want to, if I'm somebody who is just terrified of death, which I am, by the way, like it is something that...
You are, really?
It's
at 20?
You know, I speak to a lot of people about this. It's something...
Oh my God.
It's something... It's something I talk to a lot of people about, and generally when I speak to people who are like-minded as I am, and people like yourself, people who don't believe in God and who are very who have promoted sort of enlightenment values and trying to find meaning in a meaningless universe, as your final chapter has it, they're very much, no, we shouldn't be scared of death. We should live in the now and or not the now, but you know, we should the now in terms of our temporal life rather than our afterlife. But to me, it's still something that is terrifying, and I think it's a fear of the unknown. Perhaps is that not a fear that you share even a little bit?
Nope, not even a little bit. And when I was your age, this has been the last thing I thought about. I'm amazed to hear you say that. I mean, when you get up in the morning, do you think, oh God, this is really a dreadful day, I could die? No, you don't think that, do you?
Well, it's more like this is not a dreadful day, but I am going to die eventually. It's going to happen. Why should I get out of bed in the morning if it's all... You get into a very kind of nihilistic spiral, which is something that I imagine you would have, like your last chapter, actually, meaning in a meaningless universe. This is kind of the center point of why I'm interested in philosophy, which is upon this realization that I don't think there's a God in governing the affairs of man. I don't think that there's this kind of transcendent purpose. Where can we find this motivation to get out of bed in the morning? Does that finality of death and that finality of you and the concept that the ego, that the very thing that gives you existence, does that not in any way kind of just terrify you or make you think that maybe it's not all worth it?
Okay, so you remind me of...
I don't know, that's very fascinating. I've heard Alex say this in other conversations, particularly a conversation he had previous to this about nihilism itself, because he's basically a nihilist. Not basically, he is a nihilist, existentially. And so the notion, I don't know, I found a lot of freedom in kind of rejecting my faith, freedom to be and explore things in life that I, was restricted to exploring, because the notion I had was that, well, everyone's going to die someday and they're either going to heaven or hell. The only way to get to heaven is to know God, is to know and accept the gospel. And so that was kind of the notion I was working with at the time. And so what was my life, if it was about anything, it had to be about sharing the gospel, because everyone was either going to heaven or hell. And just like automatically they were going to hell until they heard the gospel and accepted it. And so literally, like, there was no sense of like, I should be able to like explore what I love. I should be able to explore what I think is really cool, what I'm interested in, because all I had time for in life was, you need to share the gospel with everyone and anyone and everyone as much as possible. And you can see how that would be very exhausting, and you lose a sense of yourself. You lose a sense of what you desire and what you love. And you kind of have to push that down in order to live a life that is in accordance with what God wants. And ever since kind of leaving my faith, I've been able to actually explore things that I love to do. I've been able to dream. I've been able to kind of be like, you know what? I don't actually care about this thing in my life, so I'm going to not do it. There's a sense of freedom, probably because I left the faith at an older age. I think when you're younger and you don't know yourself as much, and you didn't like suppress that, over time, then it's not going to be something that really brings too much leaving the faith. But yeah, there's a sense of immense freedom I think I've had since leaving, and the ability to kind of be like, hey, I'm going to do this and I'm going to chase this sort of dream, and like day by day, just like chasing after it has been beautiful. And I found so much like purpose and just beauty in it. I don't know. I've loved every single minute of like doing this channel, even the moments that are hard. I've found so much, freedom, so much like hope and joy, and just like every day being like, hey, I have this goal, I'm going to do it. And I think that brings so much purpose to someone's life. If you have a goal that you love and a goal that you desire to, like a goal that you actually want to accomplish, and you just don't give up, you just say, I'm going to do this and I don't care who the hell gets in my way. They're not getting in my way. Come hell or high water, I'm going to achieve this. I think you're going to find so much purpose, and you're going to discover so much about yourself in doing that action. That act of going after and chasing a dream is so beautiful. It's amazing. And the fact that life is short, right? I have one life, YOLO. I think that brings it even more, I guess, joy. Like this process of, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, I don't have to care about what other people think about me. I don't have to care about what other people say or do in response to me chasing my dream, because that brings me purpose. That brings me joy. And if they're not on board, if they don't care, who gives a fuck, right? Because I care. I love this. I'm going to chase it come hell or high water. And if someone's against it, well, then that's on them. That's their life. They live that. Cool on them. Go live your life. I don't really care what you say or think, but I care about chasing this dream. I care about, encouraging other people to chase their own dreams. That's what I care about at my core. And I found so much more freedom in just accepting that, I have one life and maybe there's nothing. Maybe there is something, I don't know. But the fact that I have a life, the fact that I'm here is beautiful. I get to chase this dream, this like amazing thing, and hopefully encourage you guys. Like, you have your life. Don't let other people tell you what to do. Don't let other people rule your life. Don't let God rule your life. Be the arbiter of your life. You have autonomy. If you have dreams, if you have something that you want to aspire to, go for it. Die on that hill. Die for what you love. Die for what you believe in. And I think you're going to find so much joy in that. I mean, I know it's true for my life. And so, yeah, just this whole like idea of like, there needs to be an ultimate purpose to reality, or else I'm going to be nihilistic and hate myself, hate my life. I don't buy into that, because to me, I've been able to create purpose and meaning in my own life by finding what I love, finding a dream of mine and just chasing it. And it doesn't matter what happens along the way, because the journey, the chase, the ability to kind of make it happen is so much more worth it than anything else. So death, and if anything, is motivation to chase your dream. It's a motivation to not care about what other people say, think, or whatever of you. It's motivation to say, I don't care about what other people want for me. I want this, and I'm going to chase it. And I think it brings so much purpose, especially if you can actually start to see it happening. Like you start doing it, and over time you start to see it happen just a little bit here and there. And it's like, whoa, that's so cool. I don't know. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So definitely encourage y'all, like, chase your dreams, man. Really do. And like, die on that hill. And if you don't know what your dream is, just like in your free time, start exploring things that you love, and commit yourself to it, right? It doesn't have to be a big thing. You can be like, 5 minutes a week. At this time, I'm going to do this one thing for 5 minutes a week. For me, it was, I'm going to produce a podcast once a month for 12 months. That was my goal. And I've been able to do that. And as long as I keep to that goal, then I'm chasing my dream. And that'll probably change. That'll probably evolve into more things. I have new goals, new ideas, but it's brought me so much purpose and so much joy. So, yeah. Sorry, that was my little tangent, but I don't think you need an absolute purpose. In fact, I think absolute purpose can sometimes get in the way of you fulfilling your personal, individual purpose. So, sorry, that was my little tangent, but I'm very passionate about that. Very passionate about that topic.
Woody Allen's character, Alvy Singer, in his Academy Award-winning film Annie Hall, in which he has a flashback scene where young Alvy is 8 years old and he won't do his homework, and his mother takes him to the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist, okay, Alvy, what's wrong? He said, the universe is expanding. He goes, what does that got to do with your own? Well, the universe is everything. And if it's expanding, then one day it's just going to all fly apart. And therefore, nothing really matters, because he's an atheist anyway. And his mother says, what's the universe got to do with it? We live in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn's not expanding.
Right.
So I call that Alvy's error. That is, that we don't live, 15 billion years from now when the universe will be expanded beyond our existence or whatever the number is. We live now. We're on Earth. It's not expanding, and it doesn't matter what happens in 80 years or whatever. You live now, today, and tomorrow, this week. This is it. Make the most of it. Get up and get out and get going like you're doing. You're doing a podcast. This is cool.
Yeah.
And that's what most people need to focus on. Again, back to the, live in the now, not literally the now, because you do have to plan for tomorrow, but in the short term is what counts. And even whether there's a God or not, whether there's an afterlife or not, is irrelevant, because we don't live in the afterlife. We live in this life. And whether there's a God or not doesn't matter, because that shouldn't be your motivation for being a good person, for being socially conscious, for being productive. And there are much better reasons to do that, just for its own sake, for goodness sake, and loving people for the sake of just for love. That's it. That's its own reward. You don't need the promise of an afterlife or a reward by God for living a good life. It's a much higher moral plane, I think, to do it for its own sake.
So you're suggesting kind of just changing perspective, because to me, I mean, you can still see that the nihilistic case, that essentially what you're suggesting is, yes, it's true that this is all going to happen. It's true that the universe is expanding, and it's true that everything has a finality, and eventually we're not going to be able to see the stars in the sky if the planet even exists then at all. But let's just kind of ignore that and change our perspective and focus on what's happening right now. It's like being in a car and you're traveling towards a cliff edge, and someone points out, look, we're going to roll off this cliff. And you say, yeah, but like, we're in the car. Like, the car isn't moving. Like, we're not moving inside the car. Okay. We're still sat and having this conversation. Let's not worry about that. Let's live in the now. It's like, look, the car's still going to go off the cliff eventually, even if you try to kind of ignore that and focus on the perspective of being inside the car. You know what I mean?
I guess what I would say to that, though, is it's not like a perfect analogy, because the end of the universe, the end of time, or our current iteration of the universe is not, it has nothing to do with us, right? We are currently living, and there's no chance that we are going to live the billions of years in the future when the universe eventually implodes or what have you. I guess despans, comes back together. I don't know. There's a lot of theories out there, but that has nothing to do with us. And so it's not like you're driving in a car and it's going to eventually crash, and you might as well like live in the now, right, until it crashes. I think that has more to do with maybe death, but the idea of the universe being destroyed, it's more like, 1,000 years from now, some person you don't even know and know nothing about is going to die. That's kind of what it is. And it's like, okay, like everyone dies eventually, and the universe is one of those entities that eventually, I guess, is going to be destroyed. We don't even know that for sure. We don't know that for sure. It's an assumption based upon the expansion of the universe. But we don't know. We don't know what happens after the universe disbands. Does it still exist in some other form? Who knows? So it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with your life. Your life is more than that, and less than that. It's just other. Has nothing to do with that at all. Now your death has something to do with you. I guess that would be a little bit more familiar with the car analogy, but yeah, no, the universe, that I don't know, that has nothing to do with you. That's my thought.
Like if you had a week to live, yes, that would be I think it's too short term still. It would be like if you had a week to live. Yes, that would be very different than if you're just figuring, I'm going to live 80 or something. The 80 part is far enough out, you don't really have to think about it on a day-to-day basis. At least most of us don't. I suspect, Alex, your interest in this subject is very personal and emotional. Mine's more intellectual. I get where you're coming from. It's entirely possible to talk yourself down that rabbit hole. I don't think it's very productive. Right. Intellectually, as a philosophical treatise, the nature of identity, who we are, what is the soul, what's the meaning of life? These are all super interesting questions. I love reading about this stuff and writing about it. But getting too invested in it in terms of like just getting up out of bed tomorrow, I think that's not productive.
Right, and that's an important distinction to make. There's I think that the intellectual endeavors that we make can inform our emotional sensibilities. So I think that an intellectual understanding of death and an intellectual understanding of our fear of death and where it comes from can help us manage the emotions. But like you say, I think that I can justify the change in perspective on an emotional basis, because like you say, it's just not productive. But intellectually, I think it's perhaps important to look at the bigger picture and see if
it'd be like saying, well, I just studied the free will determinism debate and I've decided I'm a determinist. So what's the point? Well, what do you mean, what's the point? I mean, it doesn't really matter whether you're a compatibilist, a libertarian, free will, a determinist. You still got to get up and around tomorrow, and you act as if you have free will. You feel like you make free choices. So it's a useful fiction to believe in free will, even if it's completely an illusion.
But I think that's part of the irony and absurdity of it. That's part of the thing that plays into the trouble that people have, is this idea that, like with the free will thing, you can convince somebody that determinism is true, or not even determinism, just that free will doesn't exist in some other sense. Maybe there's randomness in the universe, whatever it is. You can convince them of that, and within that argument, you can instill the necessity of the illusion of free will and the fact that we'll never be able to rid ourselves of that. And it almost makes it worse, because now you've got a bunch of people sat around thinking, I know that free will doesn't exist, but I can't.
I just realized they're talking about free will, so we can knock that one off on the checklist. Free will. Boom. Bingo, bango, bongo. There's probably another one. I'll look through the list and I'll announce it if there was one.
Can't help but act as though it does. It can drive people insane to think about the fact that they are acting in accordance with something that they truly believe not to be true, and they can't help it. That's quite a troubling prospect rather than a consoling one.
Yes, I guess. I first of all, I think the average person doesn't think about these things at all. So we're talking about a small percentage of the population that right. is really into these big questions. Now, does it matter socially? Maybe. I mean, in terms.
They talked about nihilism. So if you have that on your list, you can also cross that one off. And then what else? And then they talked about the expansion of the universe. I'm going to count that as Big Bang Theory. So if you have Big Bang Theory and if you have nihilism, feel free to check that off on your list. Let's continue.
In terms of our understanding of human behavior and what side of the fence you're on about, say, nature, nurture, or free will and determinism, can affect how you think about, say, criminal reform and restorative justice versus retributive justice, for example. Yeah. So in my book, The Moral Arc, I have a couple chapters on this problem, in the sense that, if you have kind of an Old Testament view of human nature that, we're born evil, people are bad, And the only way to deal with them is the really bad ones is lock them up, and because they made bad choices. So that's kind of that libertarian free will that Christians believe in, monotheists believe in, because you need to be held accountable for your actions, and therefore punished or rewarded in heaven, and punished or rewarded here on earth, and so on. Now, that's not a very productive view of human nature. And so one of the reforms that's happened over the centuries since the Enlightenment is criminal justice. That is the abolishment of the death penalty, the abolishment of torture, and abolishment of death penalty almost everywhere except America. Even in America, it's only practiced by a couple of states, Texas, Ohio, just a few others. California, here where I'm at, we have the death penalty, but the last person executed, I think, was 1996. There are criminals in California who want to get on once they know they're convicted. They want to be on death row rather than a life in prison. Because they're going to have life in prison anyway, and the conditions apparently are better on death row than they are in the general population. Right. So, in other words, it's just not a practical thing. But I think what's behind it is the idea that it's not that the criminals have no responsibility, but that often the factors that drove them to do what they did are not the same kind of things that you and I have to deal with. They had horrific backgrounds: drug addiction, gang membership, damaged brains. They got no prefrontal cortex. It's just quiet. Their urges bubbling up from within. If you and I had those urges, we would not act on them. Other people can't control themselves. All right, so we've kind of taken into account that much of human behavior is more deterministic than we like to think, and therefore, that we have to adjust the law for that. So, for example, there's degrees of homicide, second degree, first degree murder, second degree murder, and so on. Crimes of passion, or crimes driven by drug addiction or brain damage. These are legitimate arguments.
I'm Mindy, and I'm a meathead.
It was an interesting childhood. She just couldn't get enough of meat.
It wasn't easy being a meathead.
What is this?
Now it is.
Meat for real meatheads.
Oh,
Yumbo.
God.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it.
Sorry
Meat Base 44.
And so our criminal justice system has become much more humane, rational, scientific, and reasonable because of our changed theory of human nature. So there, I would say these kinds of debates do matter in terms of public policy and the law that affects all of us. So there, I would say, understanding the determinist position is important. Even if you say, well, I personally feel like I have free will, it's an illusion, but it's a good illusion. I recognize other people have different conditions. They simply cannot control them. I mean, people here in America, we have this opioid crisis. I mean, it's like more people are killed from drugs than from automobile accidents. But we treat them differently. We're like, well, you didn't mean to get in an automobile accident, but you chose to take the painkillers. Yes, I would say no, not so much. It's not the kind of choice that if you're not an addict, you would understand. It's the addict. Right. They really can't help it. They're gonna do this. And so we have to take that into account. So there, I would say that these issues matter.
Sure, yeah. And without sort of...
I really appreciate that he said you don't have to take full determinism in order to believe this, but the fact that humans are more determined than we like to think still plays a part in our justice system. Because I don't know, I lean sort of compatibilist, which is basically determinism in a ontological sense, but in the sense of like how we treat justice and right and wrong. We think of it in a compatibilist sense. That's what I think really matters. But this idea of the justice system kind of changing to match a doesn't have to be full determinist. It just means that we're recognizing people have less free will, less control. Maybe in more of an indeterminist world, which is still a lack of free will. It shows that we need to radically update and change our justice system, which I would very much so agree with. It doesn't have to be full determinism or full indeterminism. There can still be some sense of free will, but the fact that there's a lot less free will than we like to, grant, that would garnish a justice system that would be very different.
Of delving too much into the determinism free will debate, I believe I heard you saying once that you still fall down on the side of free will, if I don't. Compatibilism, right?
Yeah, just think of the most famous defender of this is Dan Dennett in his book Freedom Evolves.
Right.
He has the concept of degrees of freedom. It's a spectrum, and I like that very much. I think we have degrees of freedom, some more, some less, within populations or species. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that I outright reject compatibilism as a theory of free will. But the reason why I brought up the fear of death, rather than to get into that debate, which is one that I love having, and perhaps we could have another time. But the reason I brought it up was to say, look, I am somebody who's scared of death, who wants to put it off as much as possible. Where are we at right now, economically and technologically? Like, what can I do as someone like that? What are the options currently available to me?
Well,
other than just getting over it.
Okay. These are separate questions. I thought you were asking me what can you do to continue your life as long as possible?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
yes. Okay. Well, we have a pretty good idea about that. Don't smoke. Minimum drinking, or
Sure.
modest drinking. Medium risk taking in terms of sports and things like that.
I want to live past 100 and 150.
Yeah.
I want to live on.
Okay.
What are the technologies that are open right now?
There is nothing. There's absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
Nope. There is nothing. You can take all the vitamins and minerals and supplements you want, like Ray Kurzweil does, or you can get on board with Aubrey de Grey's program. But researchers that do this, that study aging, they tell me that Aubrey has these 7 things you have to do to try to re-engineer your cells so they keep duplicating indefinitely. We're not close to doing any of the 7.
Mm-hmm.
So really, forget it. You're not going to quit aiming for 150.
I don't just mean about.
Just aim for 80 or whatever. Okay, so eat a balanced diet, not too much alcohol, stay out of cigarettes. I mean, really, and work out every day. Do you work out every day? Because working out and exercising, cardiovascular every day, this is way better than anything else you could do besides not smoking.
You're really putting me on the spot there.
Okay, there you are, Alex. Here you are. You're thinking about this. What can I do? What can I do? There must be some magic pill. Just go work out every day. That's going to be way better than any of these imagined technologies that are not there yet.
Right, but there are technologies that aren't imagined, which you talk about in the book in terms of how we can take what it is that makes us and preserve it either in ice or not ice, but preserve it frozen or preserve it frozen in the cloud technologically, or upload it to a computer, or preserve it in such a way that it can be uploaded to a computer. Where are the technologies at on that? Is that something that is as equally kind of this isn't going to work, this is ridiculous, or has that got a little bit more hope?
Yeah, for the mind uploading has almost no hope at all. Cryonics would be so for 2 reasons on that, but I'll come back to that. Now, cryonics is a better bet in my mind than mind uploading for 2 reasons. One, it gets around the problem of identity that I talk about with mind uploading. That is, the idea of mind uploading is that we are copying your connectome, all your memories, and converting it into a digital file and then uploading it into some other medium, say the cloud. That's not you. That's a copy of you.
Right.
Okay. So this is another huge philosophical problem, the nature of identity and so on. And my take on that is you have to have a continuity from one moment to the next of your.
Everyone uses the internet. In one way,
point of view self. So you're not just your memory self, you're also your point of view self that is through the eyes, experiencing the world from one moment to the next. Now that continuity can be broken by sleep, for example, or general anesthesia, but you come back. Your continuity your identity returns, the continuity continues. With cryonics, it would be like that. You would, I think, if we managed technologically to do this, not even close yet, but could happen in principle, I think it would just be like waking up from a long sleep or a general anesthesia. You'd have no memory because the atoms are all frozen in your molecules are all frozen in your neurons, so there's no memory. But you would then presumably wake up and be looking at the world through your eyes again. And so you could continue. That has a better bet than the mind uploading, which is you're still 6 feet under centuries ago or whatever when we finally turn on your digital file and bring you back. It's not you.
Okay, so it's a problem of personal identity, and you talk about the continuity thing. I find that
it's kind of like the ship of Theseus kind of thing, where Theseus has a ship, and over time he replaces one part of the ship at a time, and eventually he replaces every single part of the ship. The question is the ship of Theseus still the same ship, or is it an entirely different thing? Because every part over time has been replaced by a new part. So it's kind of a similar idea there. But yeah, I would say the thing that kind of pops out to me here is this idea that, like, what was I gonna? I lost the idea. I lost the thought. Dang it. If it comes back to me, I'll share it. But yeah, no, it's definitely. Dang it! I'm so sad. I lost my train of thought. I'll let you know if I get back to it.
That's interesting. So when you talk about like going to sleep or being under anesthesia.
That's what it was. Yeah. The anesthesia part. I've heard that before. Basically, anesthesia is a type of death because you are going out and you have no longer any sort of consciousness. And then when you wake up, you reemerge with consciousness. And so in a sense, it's a type of death. Same thing with sleep. As long as you kind of go out of consciousness, there's an unconscious sleep, but there's like a dreaming sleep as well. So you can consider that a type of death in a sense. It's an end of a consciousness and then the beginning of a new consciousness. Is that the same thing? I guess he here disagrees with that, that you aren't a new creation when you wake up. And I would probably agree with that because you have the same memory, but I don't know. I mean, let's say you get uploaded to the internet, right? Or you are cryogenically survived and then you reawaken. Yeah, I guess the question is, what makes you you? Are you still you? Ship of Theseus kind of stuff is what we're getting back to. But yeah, no, the whole idea of like anesthesia being a type of death kind of blows your mind. You don't really think of it in that way, but in a sense it is. Like, you no longer are aware or conscious. There's nothing going on. And so in a sense you are dead, but you wake up from the death. So I don't know, maybe that's what reincarnation's like, or maybe that's what kind of multiple lives theory from a materialist perspective, where if the universe is eternal, then eventually all the material that makes you up is going to be reformed in the same way, in the same manner, and so thus you will exist again, just as a matter of infinite odds and infinite possibilities. You will exist again if the universe is eternal, and so and everything's material. So that also makes sense, but I don't know.
Anesthesia, whatever it is, you come back. You said you come back to that body eventually, so that continuity returns to you. But like, to me, that seems so. So when you're talking about making a copy of yourself, it's kind of like that Star Trek episode you mentioned, where because the transporter works by destroying you and recreating you somewhere else, and then you've got this problem where the first one doesn't get destroyed and they meet each other, and who's actually the real guy. I'm not a Star Trek watcher, as you might be able to tell, but there is a continuity in the sense that, so if you were to go to sleep and you wake up, you say that continuity returns, right? Is that what you're suggesting? Because given that, let's say that you were able to sleep long enough that every atom in your body has been replaced by its natural processes, and then you wake up again, you wake up in a completely different body. But would you still say that continuity has returned to itself? Because if it has,
I would.
Then surely if I create that future you, that version of you that you're going to wake up in, completely new atoms, I'll restate, like if you fall asleep for, I think it's something like 7 years it takes for the body to fully replace itself. if I could take the atoms that would eventually form you in that 7 years' time, produce it right now next to you, and just transport you from there to there, you fall asleep in that body, you wake up in that body, surely that's the same thing as falling asleep and waking up in the same place, even though it's over a course of 7 years versus me taking you there right now. Like, the continuity issue to me seems the same whether I take you from where you are now into a new body, or whether I make you go to sleep now and wake up in what is essentially a new body as well. I don't see why there's a relevant difference there.
I could see it, I guess, if you replaced, let's say you replaced your neurons one at a time over some period of time where and since the brain can't sense itself, you wouldn't even know this was being done, however it would be done. The continuity of your thoughts is still there. Yeah, you'd still be you. What you're proposing is that, but how do you transfer the thoughts from this platform to this other platform?
Well, who knows?
I mean, I agree. It doesn't have to be platform dependent. It could be any medium.
But is that the important factor here? How it's moved? Because essentially,
isn't it?
What we're talking about when it comes to falling asleep for 7 years and then waking up again is your consciousness being transported from one body across time into another. When we talk about moving you into a new body, it's your consciousness being transported from one space to another. So you're moving across space rather than moving across time. That's the only difference there, and I don't see why that would be relevant to what makes you you. And like you say,
okay, all right. So in that case, then there could be more than one you.
Right.
So with the Star Trek transporter, or let's say we upload your connectome, and now there's Alex. But we do this while you're alive. Let's say we have a sophisticated MRI brain scanner, and we scan your connectome, and we put it in a clone of your body, and now we have two Alexes, Alex 1 and Alex 2, each of whom thinks they're the genuine real Alex. That would just, so that's a kind of solution to the identity problem. There's just two of you. That's possible. And each of you thinks you're the real one, and your friends are, they can't tell the difference, and so on.
That's what Captain Kirk does in the end. Yeah. I watched the clip after reading about it in your book, and he just says, as improbable as it is, we now have two of these people on board, whatever his name is.
Right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. So that's one solution, maybe. Again, I think we're in such a realm of science fiction and metaphysics or whatever, and philosophy that again, is this, are we even close to being able to do this? No, not even remotely close. So but again, I don't see you wearing the cryonics bracelet.
This game, you're not ready for it.
Right. Well,
are you signed up?
Maybe I would if it was a little bit cheaper. Who knows? But I mean, you say yourself in the book that
it's not that expensive. No, you just get an insurance policy, and for you, an life insurance policy is super cheap because you're 20. You could get it for I don't know, probably $100 a year or something on the premiums, and you just make the beneficiary, instead of your mom or your sister or whatever, you just make it the cryonics company is the beneficiary. They get the $100,000 of the whatever it is cost now, $250,000 for the whole body. You don't have to have a lot of money for that.
So why aren't people doing it? I mean,
why are people doing it? Because I think there's a couple of reasons. First of all, most people haven't thought about it all that much. Second, it's never been demonstrated. There's no experiment run that shows, look, we did it with a dog. The famous examples of dogs that come back, they're not frozen. They're just, their bodies are chilled, much like people that get open heart surgery and they bring the temperature of the body down, or people that fall into a frozen lake or whatever, and they're in there for half an hour, and they bring them back. Well, it's that low temperature that matters, that keeps them going. But that's not being frozen. That's not minus 260 degrees in liquid nitrogen. That's very different. So proof of concept is super important. Once it happened, and I think that would be a game changer. And this could easily be done with a dog, for example. You just see if memories are still intact. Do they recognize their name? Do they remember where they lived, and so on? That would be a substantial step.
Yeah, and I suppose until that proof is substantiated, you'd be better off putting that $100 a month into a savings fund that you can give to your children or something. That's probably the way that people are seeing it.
Yes. Yeah. Right. But let's say you don't have to be rich to do this. You just have. I mean, I have 2 life insurance policies, for example. It's not that expensive, and I'm giving them to different people. And okay, so what? I mean, I could just add a third, or just make one of them the cryonics company.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't done that. I'm not sure why. I guess in my position, it would be something of an endorsement of cryonics, and yet I'm skeptical. But somebody who
Okay, I was researching a little bit there in the background, because they said he mentioned the idea of like our body regenerates every 7 years, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's a myth. I don't think that that's true. And so I looked into it, because I'd heard somewhere it was like your eyes actually don't change. Your eyes don't regenerate, but last an entire lifetime. So I was looking up that, and here it is. Does your body really replace itself every 7 years? These old adages have been batted around throughout the years by a whole cross-section of artists, entertainers, and philosophical types. From Jean-Paul Sartre, we only become what we are by radical and deep-seated refusal of that which others have made us, and Bob Dylan. According to research, our bodies replace many of their nearly 30 trillion human cells regularly. That's so many, and that's only about 1%. About 330 billion of those cells are replaced every day, and about 1% of all our body cells. Other cells, like the tiny ones in our gut, renew within a week. So there are things that renew regularly, on the daily, on the weekly. These things do regenerate frequently. You might have hoped your new cells would be the key to longer life. Unfortunately, it's a little more complicated. For example, some parts of the body's cells, like those in our brain, in our heart, and in our eyes, are within us our entire lives. So the cells that make up your brain, the cells that make up your heart, the cells that make up your eyes, those last from when you were a baby all the way until death. So the notion that every aspect, every cell in your body regenerates is a myth, but there is a significant amount of change in regeneration that happens. Like a lot of, like your lungs are not going to be the same lungs as they were when you were born. They regenerate frequently. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of that right there. But so in terms of, do we regenerate? Are we basically a ship of Theseus every single 7 years? The answer is no. And I think a significant part of that is the fact that the brain, is not regenerating all the time, but it stays stagnant. It stays with you your entire life. That's interesting, because to me that kind of shows, well, maybe that's why we attach ourselves so much to our brain. We think of ourselves so much as a brain entity. We also think of ourselves as an eye entity. Like if you were to close your eyes, you kind of lose a bit of yourself. You lose who you are. Or at least I shouldn't say that, but we kind of think of who, like our identity, right? We don't think of ourselves as a finger, right? We don't think of ourselves as a nose. We don't think of ourselves as a knee, right? We kind of see that as a part of who we are, but it's not like who we are at our basis. But if we were to point to like, where are we? Where do you as a soul, as an entity, as an identity exist? Most people point to their eyes, or they point to the brain. And that's because we experience the world through the eyes. I think if we saw the world maybe through our chest, or if we saw it through our hand, we'd probably point to there, because that's where we mostly experience the world. So I think it's really interesting that, that's how we kind of perceive ourselves. It also correlates with the idea that that's the part of you that never regenerates. That's the part that lasts your entire life. I think certain cells in the eyes and brain do regenerate and change, but generally, most of the cells last your entire life. So that also is an interesting correlation. Maybe that's part of the reason why evolutionarily we kind of view things in that way. We view ourselves as existing here or here, and not as a foot. We see ourselves in that way. So it's so fascinating. But yeah, I think I would reject that kind of notion that Alex was bringing up because it's just not true. Like, there are parts of you that exist your entire life. You don't fully regenerate all the time, as people say. Like, every 7 years, that's a myth.
No one cares what they think. Why wouldn't they do it? I mean, I'll ask you, why haven't you done it?
Well, I think, like you say, it's perhaps because I haven't thought about it enough. I think that there seems to be something. There's something a bit terrifying about the idea of trying to edit nature. I mean, death has always been the finality. I mean, it's such an important concept in religion and culture and everywhere. It penetrates everything we do in one way or another. So to try and kind of dip your toe in a technology that's trying to reverse that, it just seems like an incredibly unnatural thing to do. I mean, it's like gene editing or something. It's like, I can see why this on paper looks like a great idea, but it just doesn't feel right. Something's
but we've been doing that for a long time now, especially in the last century or so. It just since the Crick and Watson and the DNA, the CRISPR, all this stuff is coming and it's big, it's exciting. But again, I mean, a lot of the medical ethicists are worried about CRISPR. I'm not worried about it. The medical ethicists are concerned, playing God and all that kind of stuff and creating monsters or whatever. Look, just plow forward. And if there's a problem develops, stop, and believe me, government regulators have no problem jumping right into an industry and saying, you're not going to do this anymore.
Right.
And so we're already doing, the things that you said you're concerned about. It just feels differently when you're talking about like the ultimate, we're going to defeat death. Again, I'm coming at it from a slightly different side. Don't worry about death. Just try to solve specific problems that cause death. Like seat belts in cars. That was a solution to a problem that has reduced the levels of fatality dramatically.
Yeah.
Don't smoke. There's a whole bunch of things you could do. You don't smoke, do you?
No, absolutely not.
Oh, okay, there we go. We got one. You have one. So, just again, you're 20 and you tell me you're concerned about this. It's something you think a lot about. And yet you're not signing up for cryonics. You don't work out every day. There's a bunch of things you could do. You're not doing it. So how worried are you really? Or is it really just kind of more of an intellectual interest?
Well, that's probably going to keep me up at night now. Thanks very much for that. But given the absolute just nihilistic quality to almost everything we've been talking about, I think a good place to and speaking of finality and things coming to an end, that's probably a good place to leave it with that good piece of advice for all of our listeners. Get out of bed in the morning.
Come on.
Do some exercise. Sign up for freezing yourself in the hopes that one day you can be resurrected in another body that may or may not still be you. Advice that we can all follow. And I can only thank you for sharing with us. Unless there's anything else particularly that you wanted to add, I think that's a good place to end things.
Okay, sounds good. You're a very precocious young man. This is one of the better conversations I've had about my book. Thanks.
Well, thanks a lot. I'd love to pick your brains sometime about the free will determinism thing and the implications there. Perhaps we can do something like that.
You're in college, I presume. Are you?
That's right.
What are you studying?
Philosophy and theology at Oxford currently.
Good for you. Well, you should go on and get a PhD and be a professor and write books about all this grand stuff. It's good.
Well, I'll see if I can find the motivation, given that we're all going to die in the end. But we might be able to find it somewhere.
As I said, you still have to pay your bills tomorrow, so you got to do something.
Yeah, that's true. Well, speaking of paying the bills, if anybody wants to support this podcast, they can do so at patreon.com/Cosmic Skeptic.
And if anyone wants to support this podcast / reaction series, you can give down below buymeacoffee.com/truth_tradition. It's linked in the description. It's a great way to support it. Everything goes directly into the podcast, allowing me to just improve the content, improving what's going on, and just, make it more fun for you guys. Stuff like bingo sheets, like other stuff too. Like better equipment, better guests, being able to just spend more time, getting more content out there. All of that goes into this podcast. It's a great way to support it. The live stream gear that I got, all of this was made possible because of you guys giving to the live stream fund at buymeacoffee.com/truth_tradition. So if you want to be a part of that process, if you want to be a part of making this even better and improving the search for truth and tradition and how they come together, then go down there, go to the description. It's a great way to do it. Anyway, the video looks like it's about to end. I watch everyone to the very end, so I'll watch this to the very end, and then we'll do our comment. Special comment.
I want to thank everybody for listening, and especially thank you, Dr. Shermer, for being here. And I want to just remind you all that you can subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can do so here. If you're listening on iTunes, be aware that it's available on all these different platforms. Everything's in the description. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Michael Shermer.
Very good. Very good. All right. Let us leave a comment time. Well, first, let's mark it off. So we have now watched 129 videos, and together through these live streams, we've watched 23 videos. Boom. That's amazing. I love it. This one was a pretty cool conversation. I think, to me, it kind of shows the analytical side of Alex. He definitely, I don't know, his way of doing philosophy is very analytical. Hey, that's my video. So it's interesting how that's kind of the case there, but yeah, because I don't know, I've always thought of philosophy in terms of like personal utility. I don't really care too much about like the deep. Well, I care about the deep questions, but I don't know. I don't care about philosophy once it starts getting into territory where I don't understand how it applies to my life at all, and I find it boring, you know? That's kind of and I don't say that because to say like, don't do that stuff. I think if you find joy in that and if you find happiness and like you love to do that, go for it actually, because that's amazing. I love seeing people enjoy what they love doing. So go for it. That's amazing. But in terms of like, you know, asking what's an ultimate purpose to life? Is there an ultimate purpose? That stuff, I don't know. I just don't find it too interesting. Unless maybe we found out that there was a God, then I would maybe find it interesting. I don't know. Anyway, let us leave a comment. Let's get some inspiration. What do we got going on? I'm an atheist, and I find that I think about death multiple times a day. Wow, that's a lot. Not because I'm afraid of what will happen, but I'm saddened by the fact that one day it's guaranteed I will cease to exist eternally. And I want to say we really don't know anything about death. There's very little that we know about death. There's so much possibility out there. And I mean, I don't know. Alex, I'm afraid of death. Michael, lol, why? Because it's scary. Michael, lol, just don't be scared. Facepalm. Yeah, I kind of feel like I do that sometimes to people. I don't know. I want to give people hope, but I guess the main thing is like, just like anything that's unknown, we really don't know what's behind it. And generally things that are unknown have a bit of good and bad to them. So the notion that death is going to be ultimately all good all the time, nothing bad happens, versus the notion that death is going to be all bad, nothing good, all torture and evil all the time. Both of those notions kind of sound absurd, because it doesn't really follow what we know from this world, from this universe. This universe has sort of a middle ground. Everything seems to be not one extreme or the other. It seems to be just kind of like in the middle. The universe is kind of indifferent to you. And there's a part of that that's good, because if the universe is indifferent to you, it doesn't expect anything out of you. And so you can live life to what you want. You don't have to live life according to any sort of ultimate expectation. So I think there's a sense in which that's kind of beautiful. It's kind of nice. I guess it's about perspective, really. But in terms of like the afterlife, I think, why wouldn't we think that the afterlife would be similar to what we experience here on Earth, right? Like, that's all we have to work with. So why would we assume something different? You know, we shouldn't assume that the afterlife is going to be I don't know. Like, there's nothing. We don't know anything. Like, it's just, I don't know. Like, what's his name? Shoot, I'm forgetting his name. But Roosevelt, FDR, as he said, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. And the reason he says that is because fear is what stops you from doing things, stops you from acting. And so if there's anything to fear in life, it's fear itself. Fear of death, well, that's just fear of the unknown. And there's so much in life that's unknown. And most of the time, it's not totally good and it's not totally bad. It's somewhere in the middle. Probably not something to fear. So, yeah, those are my, that's personal philosophy from Jackson. I like the idea of nanotechnology that just repairs our body. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. Shermer is a bit much of a technical optimist. Problems will just take care of themselves. The market will sort everything out, yada, yada, yada. Well, okay. There's optimism, and then there's just a recognition that there's a recognition that there's not an ultimate just evil or ultimate terribleness. Like, life is so much more nuanced than that. It's not just all good or all bad. It's usually just gray, like, all the time. And so why would we expect death to be any different than that? That's my thought. Alex's fear of death reminds me of Julian Barnes' memoir, Nothing to Be Frightened Of. Both spend too much time in their own heads. Hour just isn't enough time to have a conversation. Good topic, but seems like the guy just ignores the fear, though. He doesn't ignore the fear. It's just that he doesn't relate to the fear. And I relate to Shermer here. I just don't relate to this idea of like being afraid of it. Maybe I would if I'm about to die, but it's hard to empathize with that. And I want to empathize with you. I'm not the person to speak to you, I guess. I'm not in that place. I haven't had that experience and I feel bad. I just don't have that. So in a sense, I kind of wish I did. I wish I could empathize and be like, I get it, but I don't. And I feel bad about that. I'm like, dang it, man. I just don't feel that existential fear. I just am like, I'm going to die. And that's that. I guess that's what Harry Potter is all about, is like accepting death as a friend, you know. It's an old friend. As you accept death, it comes for us all. And you welcome it. That's what the third brother does in the Deathly Hallows. Sorry, I'm a bit of a Harry Potter nerd. But anyway, now it is time to leave our comment. Yeah, I should write down, I should take notes, honestly. I'll take note of that in the future. Take notes before, because I had an idea on what comment to leave, but I totally forgot. Okay, this person says, I really, really don't understand the fear of death itself. I'm 20, but I think about death a lot philosophically. The only scary thing about death I can think about is to think of your loved ones grieving for you. That's what really scares me to an almost pathological degree. Pathological degree? I don't think that's the right word. Often I wish I were completely alone in life just for that reason. Well, see, but how other people feel is not your responsibility. I think that's another thing. People feel this burden to like really take care of other people's feelings. And I feel it too. I do it all the time. It's how I was raised. But at the end of the day, you are not responsible for another person's feelings. They're responsible for it. And you can help them. You can help people, you know, That's a good thing. I love helping people, but like you can't help people when you're dead, and you shouldn't feel bad about that. When you're dead and they grieve you, that's just what they deal with. That's what they have to deal with. And I think if you can see death as this sort of like end of the race, end of the road, you either lived a life that was worth it and beautiful, or you lived a life that was not. I think when you see someone who lived a good life, lived a life well, like for instance, when my grandpa died, he lived an amazing life. I loved my grandpa very much so. And I was sad when he died. I was very sad, but there was also a part of me that was like really proud of him. And like his death almost spurred me on to be like, you know what? I'm going to live a life like his. I'm going to live up to his sort of legacy. And that was beautiful. And I'm getting a bit emotional here, but like that was like something where I was like, man, I can do that. I can live a life like his. That's so meaningful and genuine and beautiful. That treats other people with respect and love and cares about the world, cares about other people on a deep, deep, deep level. So like his life, I'm sad he's gone, but I'm so glad that I had so much time with him to be able to like learn from him and carry on what he taught us, carry on the teachings and the values that he held. He lives on in me. And in a sense, if you are impacting people and those people that die, and if you die, those people you impacted, you live on in them. So yeah, they will grieve you, but that grieving is really a recognition of the impact you made in their life. And it will be, and the things that they do because of the impact you had in their life will also be a result of you. So your death is not just about the grief, but it's also an opportunity for them to walk in the things that you impacted them by, or taught them, or gave them because you existed. That was deep. I'm just kind of freestyle and philosophy here. I don't usually do this. Anyway, let's leave our little comment here. I'm going to give myself a minute, because I don't want to. I don't want this to take too long. So, let's give ourselves. We'll do 5 minutes. Is that a thing? Let me see. Here we go. 5 minutes.
60% of sales on Amazon come from independent sellers like Scott.
Okay, here we go. Oh, is this going to... Here we go. I just realized I was talking on mute. Sorry about that. Basically, I just read my comment. So there it is. You guys can read it in your own time. Right there. If you want, pause it, read it. Bada bing, bada boom. But anyway, that's going to take us to the end of this episode. We are now at 1:30, I believe. I might have to recount that, honestly. Yeah, but anyway, should be about 1:30 and 24 videos in. So if you liked this, give this video a like and subscribe if you want to continue this series. So far, I was able to get, let's see, on this episode, I got 4 spaces. So we're getting there. Man, it's so blurry. I wish you could see it, but I got this kind of bottom row here. And then I got up here nihilism as well. So, but let me know, did you get a bingo? It should be, I mean, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, only 4 actually. So if you got a bingo, I saw this on the site. That's a 0.33% chance of getting a bingo off 4. So, we got 4 in this one, I guess, besides the free space, so maybe it's a little bit higher. But anyway, that's going to end us for today. I hope that you guys enjoyed. Let me know down below, what costume do you have for Halloween? What costume are you wearing? Because I need some ideas, guys. I need your ideas. Please help me. Please help me. And along with that, have a wonderful rest of your day and rest of your week. And I will see you in the next one.